The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Energy is the backbone of every economy. With it, economies grow. Without it, they are stagnant. Africa is currently energy impoverished. According to the IEA, African economies that were already hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic are further challenged when you factor in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which sent food, energy, and other commodity prices soaring. According to Mr. NJ Ayuk of the African Energy Chamber, these crises are also compromising many parts of Africa's energy systems. He goes on to say they are deepening the financial difficulties of utilities, increasing risks of blackouts and rationing, and they're contributing to a sharp increase in extreme poverty. Mr. Ayuk says it doesn't need to be this way. Africa has plenty of what it takes to produce electricity. The continent has abundant resources of hydrocarbons, at least 125.3 billion barrels of crude oil, 509 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, more than enough resources to support renewables, enough sunlight to support 1,000 gigawatts of solar generation, enough running water to support 350 gigawatts of hydropower generation, enough wind to support turbines that can generate 110 gigawatts of power, and enough geothermal energy to support 15 gigawatts of capacity. I invited Mr. NJ Ayuk of the African Energy Chamber to join me for a conversation that matters about how to utilize these resources to ignite economies throughout Africa. Mr. Ayuk, welcome.
For having me. It's an honor.
When you hear those statistics that I talk about the resources that are available to countries in Africa, what does that say about what the potential is if you're able to tap into those sources of energy and the impact that they can have on economies throughout the continent?
The potential is massive growth, massive opportunities for everyday people across the continent, but also us solving our own energy crisis that we have today. 600 million Africans have no access to electricity. 900 million have no access to clean cooking technologies, most of them women. That's a human rights issue. But then again, you start looking at poverty. Even those who have electricity, they have to ration electricity, like South Africa, where it's 8 to 10 hours a day in the dark. That's Africa's most industrialized nation. So productivity is down. Taxes keep going up because you got to pay a lot more for services. Cost of living goes up, but then production across the continent is down. So we cannot really meet our development goals. We can't really meet our actions because of energy poverty, and our energy security is not guaranteed in the continent. But at the same time, there's abundant resources in the ground that can be used to drive up human flourishing in this continent.
What have been the major obstacles to being able to realize the access that you need to these energy sources? Are they political? Are they financial? Or are there other outside considerations that are hampering your ability to be able to tap into these resources?
It's a combination of all. I think sometimes we have not really, as Africans, we've not really shown those political wills to really drive up markets, to really show limited government, cut taxes, and provide the right kind of fiscal incentives in the past. But right now, we've woken up. We're doing a lot of that. We've seen that if you have limited government, like a country like Namibia, if you reform your economies like what you're seeing in Gabon and the Congos, and really put some kind of structural, you're going to see investment come in. But also, we're also seeing outside forces that have been very, very strong in really pushing for lack of investment into our energy sector because of climate concerns. We know climate change and energy poverty are two sides of the same coin, but these outside forces have been really pushed our energy sector and put it on an existential threat, because we can't get access to finance because they say your resources deemed fuel, but it can be financed. But at the same time, you're seeing fossil fuel production in most of the wealthy countries like the United States or maybe Norway in Europe being funded. So we think there is a double standard, and that disparity is really hurting everyday people, and it's really hurting us to really ascertain those principles that we want to see and all that democratic traditions that we so much envision that could really be able to reshape our economies and improve people's lives.
So that pressure from outside NGOs that are saying climate change is too big of a risk, therefore you shouldn't tap into the energy resources that are there in Africa. It's real then that they are thwarting investment and the exploration of these resources.
It is real. There has never been a time when we have seen so much pressure on Africa by NGOs. In South Africa today, you can't even shoot seismic because Western NGOs are filing lawsuits and they are blocking multinational corporations from even exploring outside South Africa, the Orange Basin in South Africa. In East Africa, in Uganda, there is the East African crude oil pipeline. That pipeline has been under massive attack from financing, from funding, and everything that is being produced by Total Energies to ensure that that pipeline doesn't get, say, 200,000 barrels of oil production. It's going to be Armageddon. It's going to be the end of the world. That's just 1.8% of U.S. production. That makes no sense. Our Mozambique, a country that's very poor, heavily dependent on aid, NGOs have done everything to block financing from going into Mozambique LNG or other projects there. And that is really hurting our potential to grow. And across Africa, you continue seeing that. The only option that the NGOs offer is that the wealthy nations are going to give us aid. I don't think Africa's future is going to be built and reliant on Africans begging for aid all the time. We should be let alone to do for ourselves what we expect our very good benevolent NGOs to come down here and do for us. So we need to access markets. We need to get NGOs to stay out of the way and let us build with those that really want to work openly and focus on how to build energy for people.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I watched an interesting interview the other day on Fareed Zakaria's show GPS with Tom Steyer, the American billionaire who also at one point put his name forward to run for the presidency of the United States. And he is a huge advocate for moving into the production of renewable energy. And he was saying, 84% of all new energy production in North America is in renewables. But I thought I couldn't help but want to talk to you about this because he's building upon the backs of an infrastructure that was built through using carbon-based fuels that were cheap and accessible. Is it realistic to be able to say, okay, let's just move towards renewables? Because off the top of the show, I noted that you have abundant sunlight and water and wind and so on. But is that an effective strategy, or do you have to say, no, we have to build our base capacity first, and the only way that we can do that is by going underground to release the resources that are there?
Good example to answer that question is look at South Africa. South Africa tried that. It went into the worst energy crisis it has had. Even during apartheid, South Africa had better electricity than they have today. You have to be careful. What you need to build developing economies and emerging markets, especially in Africa, is going to be baseload energy. And baseload energy only comes from fossil fuels. So we shouldn't try to live in life when we're saying just turning more renewables. Let's look at this. If Europe could use renewables, they could spend so much of trillions of dollars or euros after the crisis in Ukraine started. They could have put solar and wind on every European home, but they realized that the sun don't shine forever, wind don't blow forever. Renewables today in Africa, when you build a 100 megawatts, it's operating at 30 megawatts. So that makes it actually more expensive. And the intermittent nature of renewables is not really going to be able to really help us. So it is not a solution for now. It could be a solution for the future, but we need that base load. And that base load comes from fossil fuels. We build upon that because that is able to drive heavy machinery. It's able to drive heavy industry so that you can be able to really build upon our economies. And then we look at bringing in renewables into the game. This idea from Tom Steyer, when they talk about move into renewables in Africa, we can't do that. We can't just leapfrog. This is not the cell phone. The cell phone, you could have a cell phone and it all connects into one towers. But when it comes to electricity and power, you need multiple generations, and that becomes very, very costly when you see. So leapfrogging is not an option for Africa. We have to go in stages, and that's why it's important to have people who understand this be doing it and then have politicians legislating energy policy. That's why we're in any kind of energy crisis.
Do you foresee that the long-term strategy in Africa would best play out? You get to develop the fossil fuel resources that you need to be able to build out that infrastructure, and then start to move to much more of renewables as a way of supplementing that. But without doing this in stages, as you say, you can't do a giant leap.
Absolutely, you have to go step by step. This is time when you need to have pragmatic, common sense solutions, and it's very easy. You build upon fossil fuels, maybe invest massively in natural gas, which is the cleanest form of fossil fuels. If we produce all of Africa's natural gas, our greenhouse gas emissions go up by just 0.68%. That's nothing for a continent that is right now under 3% greenhouse gas emissions. You take that natural gas, give you a baseload energy, and you deal with energy poverty issues, and then you start moving into renewables. You can't be promising people renewables when you don't have electricity. Where you going to transition from the dark to the dark? You go around Africa, nobody wants to breathe clean air in the dark. They want solutions today, because when they have those solutions today, they're driving up electricity in the country, in the continent, and they're creating jobs. Agriculture is working. Then we deal with our migration crisis. They would not have to choose the option of crossing the Mediterranean or the Sahara, going to European streets to look for jobs. They wouldn't have to be looking at going to North America to try to cross the border for opportunities. They will be looking at opportunities right here, and they'll be around families and build families. So we need to bring it home for those that deserve it more. But renewables are going to come into our energy systems, but we need to go step by step. We cannot go on the timelines set out by wealthy nations that have used fossil fuels to develop their economy, driven human flourishing, created real civilizations, and then when it's our time to use those same energy to do the same development, they say time is up. You need to switch, and you need to use solar and wind, when we know solar and wind is not the solution right now. It's just not, and we don't even have the money to do it.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. You know, you just touched on a very interesting point. You said, for all intents and purposes, that the best and brightest in these economies in Africa that are energy impoverished will go elsewhere to look for their own opportunities in their lives. And is that not a huge loss to economies that want to emerge? Because the most valuable resource that any country has is the brainpower of its citizens.
We've seen a lot of young people moving across from the continent into Europe, into Middle East, Dubai, Qatar. Some of them are even going down to Mexico and crossing the border into the United States. We've seen, and some of these really smart people, some of them have college degrees. They have skills in engineering. They have skills, vocational skills, that they could be building a continent where if we have electricity, we're going to have shovel-ready jobs, and we get these people building, and they will build so well that our economies will do well. We're losing our young people. We're losing so many talented people because of energy poverty, and they respond to this. It cannot be more gifts, more handouts from wealthy nations. It has to be a solution that builds from bottom up and builds our economy. And our economies are not going to be built without electricity, without energy. And we need to be able to use our energy to drive that up and free market solutions. We shouldn't be scared to embrace markets, but embracing free market solutions are going to be the way forward. Free markets, limited government, individuality, and respecting private property. Those principles, those basic tenets really drive things up. And I think that's what we should be focused on Africa rather than us embracing NGOs and wealthy nations pushing an immigration agenda that is not been very, very helpful. Even in countries, we need to keep our best and brightest right back here at home to build stronger and better communities in Africa.
Can you also tell me a bit about sort of the entrepreneurial mindset that exists in Africa? Because you have people who are always trying to find answers to problems and challenges that they face, and they're able to do it in situations where they have limited resources. What would it be like if you can unleash that creative power of entrepreneurs because they have access to reliable and affordable energy?
If you want to create an app today, go to Africa, because you're going to see a lot of challenges which will inspire that innovative, creative mind to do that. But one of the things I see, and I'm very proud of the job that I do, I get to travel across the African continent. There's so many bright people in this continent, a lot of smart young people who have gone from rag to riches stories. You get people involved in trading, in commodity trading. You get young people coming up with new names that are driving up energy in different places. But besides energy, look at what we've been able to do around fintech, with what we've been able to do with technologies. You've seen a lot of bright Africans. Energy is there, that drive is there, that they get out. They know that they would have to hustle. They would have to really get up at 4 a.m. and believe that they can do it. That if they put everything in there, it is there. And it is an amazing generation you see in Africa. It's like new founding fathers that are creating something, democratic governance, but also on corporate entrepreneurship that just moves it. And I think that generation, this young generation, with the right kind of enabling environment, with energy, they are out the world with what they'll be able to do.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So if we take a look at what's happening in Namibia right at the moment with Namibian content legislation or plan, how important of a blueprint are they starting to establish that can help, number one, Namibia, but that can also, create a framework for other nations to follow?
It is that framework where you really see empowerment, where you say, okay, look, how are we going to encourage previously disadvantaged people in Namibia that do not have access to a lot of opportunities, whether jobs, whether contracts, that you're going to see about $25 to $40 billion investment coming to that country over the next 7 years. That the Namibian citizens should be good stewards and part of that investment, but also taking into consideration that you create certainty and clear guidelines on how the investors are going to operate. So you look at transferring technology, training and developing young people, hiring, but also empowering women and making women as a central part of that economy and really being able to drive that. I think it's a blueprint many African countries to see how you manage resources, but also dealing with issues around corruption, transparency, ensuring that there is a fair process that continues to go and really driving up the rule of law. I'm so proud of what I see the Namibians doing. They are showing that it is possible in Africa, and that if these resources are being developed, the Namibians are going to benefit. They've already created a sovereign wealth fund that is going to ensure that most of the money is being invested in country and being saved for the future. So that is something that would work, and it helps them beat the resource curse that most countries have been victim of because they never had stronger institutions and processes and systems that would make them work.
So how important then that is that to international investment interests who say, I want to know that if we're investing into these resources in a country like Namibia, we are legally protected, and that there is a jurisdiction, a governance jurisdiction in play that ensures that the projects can move forward, that they're not going to get held up, and that financial resources are protected.
In a country like Namibia, and I think that's a great question, because they have been receiving in many African countries right now, because they have built an enabling environment. They have shown that they're going to respect investors. They have also shown that, you could take the government to court and beat them anytime they try to play foul. And so there's checks and balances, and that in itself, it's like fresh air to an investor, because they know they're protected. We're not competing for capital today just between South Africa or Namibia and Nigeria. You're competing with Guyana, you're competing with Qatar, you're competing with the state of Texas or Oregon. Fiscally competitive, you got to deal with the above ground risk issues so that everybody can bring money in. But also the ability to fast track and move the approval processes and the permitting processes that sometimes have held back a lot of projects and a lot of deals. It shouldn't take so long to approve a project in the time you need to build that project. So you need to be able to drive that, and these kind of pillars that they've put out there, it has given investor confidence. So you've seen all the oil majors around the world, from Total to Chevron to Exxon to Eni to Shell, they are all pitching their tent in Namibia. Some of them have discoveries, some of them are in for oil and natural gas, and they're doing well because they also understand that they want to work with those that are respecting some of the best ESG principles, that you can work and you can still produce these resources in a sustainable way, and we all can become out as winners.
I did a check on what the major sectors are in the Namibian economy right now, and at the moment, oil and gas isn't even on the list. And yet, when I was in Norway recently, Norway oil and gas accounts for close to 60% of their GDP. And the difference in per capita GDP in Namibia versus that in Norway, there's an enormous gap. How important will these advances and moves in Namibia change the quality of people's lives?
I don't even think that Namibians even understand what this would mean, but I would use a word: huge. It's going to be massive. You're going to see Namibia go up like you saw with Guyana. It's one of the fastest growing economies in the world once field development plans get sanctioned in. But also, it's not how the life is going to be changed. This is where active citizenry, this is where civil society, this is where everyday people come together and say, we need to get better plans on how these resources are going to be used to improve people's lives, by creating jobs, by also diversifying the economy, that the economy is not solely dependent on exporting oil and natural gas, but building ingrown infrastructure, expanding an already booming tourism industry, expanding the agricultural basis so that we can not just feed Namibia, but to feed across Africa. And also that, so once you start diversifying your economy from day one, then you start having a very robust, sustainable economy that just keeps growing. And I think that Namibians are going to be okay. It's a country of about 3 million people. And if they put the right kind of policies and strategies in place, there is no reason why it cannot be another Norway or another Qatar in the world. It's going, and I trust the government and what they've been doing there. They have been very, very focused on getting that to be. If they continue that, there is no reason why they can't be a success.
Well, thank you for your time today. You reinforced my belief that energy is the oxygen of the modern economy, and I will be watching closely to see how your work continues to unfold in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor.